bam, there we are. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for another amazing weekend. And this weekend, we will be talking about myths and realities of child loss. And I have my colleagues here today. There will be some more people jumping in, and for those who are tuning in, go ahead and leave us a comment about where you're from, where you're from, and let us know if you have any questions or anything like that. So as we go, anybody want to start with your introduction?
I can start.
All right.
My name is Dave Roberts. I am an adjunct professor of psychology child life at Utica University. I'm the co-author of the book When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister with Reverend Patty Farino. Um, I'm a bereavement support specialist, a licensed master social worker, and I have a variety of different categories which keep me very engaged and fully involved with life. Um, I am also a parent who's experienced the transition of a child. My 18-year-old daughter, Janine, transitioned on March 1st, 2003, of a very rare form of cancer called Avelia rhabdomyosarcoma, 10 months after giving birth to her only child and my first grandchild, Brianna. And that's my story, which is ever evolving.
Nice. Oh,
Hey, good evening, guys. Well, I'm so excited. My name is a founder of Grief to Hope, which is a 7-week grief support program. I started last in November of 2016. He was 19 years old. He was actually in a verbal altercation, which led to a physical altercation with a roommate who shot and killed him. I have been working my way through the past years to become an advocate about grief out and to let people know my experience and share my story.
very nice. And I am Tony Lynch. I am the host of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And my experience is that I lost my son almost 7 years ago to unknown causes, and I'm just here to help others, other men just like myself. I am the founder of a nonprofit, Memories of Us, where we are dedicated to helping men um, in their journey of grief and loss. To provide resources as well as support to make sure that they don't have to struggle the way that I did. Dorian?
Sorry about that. Something just happened and kicked me off, so maybe I was mouthing off a little bit.
Go ahead and give a brief introduction.
My name is Dorian Johnson, and 6 years ago, I lost my son in a hiking accident, and I've been through the fun healing process of trying to figure out how to help others who have been through the same situation and so there's a lot of things that I've been able to receive and explain, especially about the myths of grief and loss and how this whole fun process can work. So, and I really appreciate you guys inviting me to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So I guess to start off the conversation, let's go over some myths about child loss, because child loss, as much as we like to think that it doesn't happen, it really does, right? Except for when it happens to you, it just becomes more personal, and we want people to understand what we're going through, but in my mind it's like I really don't want someone else to feel the way that I do. Unfortunately, it does happen, and one of the myths is, there's one of the realities is that there's nothing that says that we're exempt from it.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, years ago, I literally had never had anything traumatic so extreme in my life that I was that one that said have me or it wasn't going to happen to us because of the community I lived in or the people I was with or like when it happened because I had never been around death or grief. You
Mhm.
know, I had lost my grandparents or maybe a great uncle or something in my lifetime. I was completely shocked and surprised at nobody knew any answers for me. Nobody knew any, resources, places to go, people to talk to. It literally was like this uncharted territory that I was in, and I felt all alone.
Mhm. Yeah. Anybody want to dovetail off of that?
I think a lot of times people don't know what to say or what to ask, especially when it, not long after it happens. Um, some of my favorite parts, if there is anything, is when somebody will come up and they don't know where I am with certain things. And so they'll say, I've wanted to tell you a story about how amazing your son was, how he was so good with my son or my daughter or respectful, but I haven't known where you are. And so I look at him and I say, if I start crying with you, it's a good thing. And if you cry with me, it shows that you love my son and you see him for who he is. And so those were beautiful moments, but not everybody knows how to do that.
Right.
Yeah, I think the greatest gift is when our children are remembered. And, I'm in the 21st year of walking the path of a parent who's experienced the death of a child. And anytime somebody mentions Janine's name, it's the greatest gift for me because it says she's been remembered. And the other thing, the reality is, and one of the realities is that, one of the myths is that, and for me, this is a self-derived myth, is that I know child loss happens to other individuals, but I'm one of the fortunate others that
Yeah.
I'm stealing this from a friend of mine who's because it hasn't happened to me yet. And that was grief I only wanted to touch from a distance. I never wanted that to impact me. But once it did, my entire safety net was compromised. But one of the things that I still think of to this day is that if it happened once, it can happen again. Because I have two other surviving sons, and I have two sons that I have, four grandchildren and one great grandchild. So I know it can happen to me. But what I do to deal with that is I don't play in the energy of that. I just use that knowledge to live each day to my fullest, try to be of service to those individuals who could benefit from my story, and just look at each day with a grateful heart. That just for gratitude for, having another day to do what I do and to count my blessings as opposed to what I don't have.
Yeah. Now, another myth that comes around with child loss is that people feel um, that it hurts the griever to talk about them, right?
Absolutely.
And Dorian said it best. A lot of people don't know what to say and things like that. And as now, from personal experience, if there was something that you can give someone to help be able to have that conversation, what would it be? Dispelling some of the myths.
Oh, first of all, for me, one of the things that I used to hear is that I really am hesitant to mention your daughter's name because I think it might upset you. Well, in early grief, I was already upset. She was never far from my thoughts. Any memories I had of her cancer battle right in front of me, right in front of my face. Now they're just alongside of me. Now they're on the side. So if anybody mentioned their name, it was actually a great thing because it gave us a chance to share some memories, share some stories, And I would hear, as Dorian would hear about his son, I would hear some really, boy, your daughter really made a difference in the life of my son or my daughter. She was a great friend. And these are things that we want to hear. So the myth is, yeah, talk about it. If we cry, we're crying because you remembered. We're not crying because, what you said made us sad. We're crying because somebody actually remembered and took the time to wade with us into the valley of grief where a lot of people aren't willing to go.
I like that. Anyone else want to dovetail off that?
Want to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Whenever I hear his name, it is such a proud moment. And there's sometimes when somebody who has heard me talk about him, and I talk about him all the time as if he's still around, like went to college or something. But I am telling stories about him all the time. I remember when Balin did this, or I remember when Balin did this, or and when they say his name, it is such an honor to hear somebody who has never heard or met such a good young man talk about him. I was able to write a book about looking for him. And so some people who have read it and they ask questions about it, I love talking about it because it's such a, everything's out on the table. I think for me, if there is one thing that has pushed me over the edge with in a good way is to be so vulnerable and authentic in my grief, in my healing, because I know that by talking about certain things, it allows somebody else who has never been through losing a child to address their own grief in the same way. And I'm like, I get it. I understand the feelings and the emotions, all of that. Let's talk about it because it allows me to see where I'm at, because sometimes I say things that have been in my mind for I don't know how long, and all of a sudden it's there. I didn't even see it coming. Right. So it helps me when somebody asks different questions that maybe I haven't even thought about.
I like that. Hope you want to dovetail.
Yeah, please. So first off, my program I do everything into the show and tell, and you would not believe the smiles on people's faces when I tell them, bring your pictures, bring your stories, tell us about what flavor of ice cream they loved, what they loved on their pizza. The most exciting thing that they get to talk about in a manner that is comfortable and it's not feared. And I think that's one of the things that we have to make sure that people understand is when people pass, they still go on living in our heart. So what I feel that same way to brag about them and want to talk about them, even though they're not physically here. But that's what gives us pride. And so with everything that I do, I'm lucky enough, because I tell this to people, is I get to say Justin's name over and over and over.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to me. I get to tell a story and live his story and live for the both of us now. And it's an incredible feeling.
I definitely like that. We do have a statement in there, and I think it goes right along with what we're saying right there. Tita has said, she goes, my apologies. My friends don't ask me to go fishing with them anymore because they are scared I might talk about my dead son. Yeah. That is hard. That is truly, truly hard because, and I think most of us has experienced that when it comes down to child loss, a lot of people don't know what to say. So what they do is that they end up walking away from us, right? They call themselves trying to give us time.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that our circle of relationships change because so many people are uncomfortable talking about their own grief and grief in general. and the grief around our loss that they kind of, slip they slip in the background. And those people that we never thought were going to step up do. And so what I would tell, and I hope it's, how do you pronounce this?
That's what I said.
Taha,
I'm gonna get,
yeah. There was,
yeah.
so I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but there will be those individuals who are going to want to go fishing with you and talk about your son with you. You just need to be able to find them, to be aware when they come by and want to engage in a conversation about your son. Those are the individuals you hang on to. The other individuals who choose not to step up at this point may not be able to for their own reasons,
Right.
but because grief is such a fluid journey, and these individuals who initially were hesitant to step up for whatever reason may step up in our ongoing journey. So it's all very fluid, and it's all very, it's a bunch of moving parts when it comes to our social circles.
If I might add to that, and I love the fact of being able to say, okay, if this person is not able to be a part of that grief, okay, because it's fluid in that. I've had the opportunity before I moved. I went out fishing almost every day, every night to spend, and no one would ever say anything when I'd say I'm going out to spend time. I'm going out fishing with my son. I'm going out fishing with Bayland, and I'm going to watch the sun go down with him every day. And so if somebody's like, hey, are you going fishing? Yeah. Do you want to go fishing with Bayland and myself? Yeah. And so they would know that the reason I am there is to spend time with my son, to watch the sun go down, to end the day on a beautiful note. If they want to come share, it's perfect. And I had people who, even if they didn't fish, they wanted to go and spend a moment to see what that was like. And it was beautiful. I was able to isolate as much as I wanted, but then I learned how important it was for me to bring people into my circle, into my little space, and have conversations with them. It was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, one of the things that I would add is a lot of time people are just really uncomfortable with grief, and they want to fix you. They don't want to see you upset. They don't want to see that side of you, and they will stay away. Fix it. And so a lot of times that's when you have to have that conversation with your friends and say, hey, I still want to do the things that we used to do together. And I'm open to talk about my son, and I am welcome to talk to you as well with it. And if you're uncomfortable with it, but it means so kind of, line that you have to draw in the sand. If they are just so uncomfortable that they don't want to experience that with you, that's okay. Let that go. Yeah. Move on. And it looks like you're getting friends with other people. What happens with us in grief is that we share our story and we find others who are experiencing that story. And so we start to build that family. Yep. And that's where we find the biggest, greatest friendship.
Yeah. Agreed.
So a lot of times that's the easiest way to help.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think Dorian and Hope mentioned was about, constantly talking about our children and keeping them in memory and connecting to their memory. This brings up another myth for me of child loss, is that, and for any type of loss, is that many in society think it's acceptable to grieve for a predetermined period of time, and then we box our grief, bury it, and we move on as if life is normal again. Grief changes, the loss changes the landscape of our lives, and particularly the death of a child, which defies the natural order of the universe. I never thought for a minute that I would outlive one of my children, and I would live to see burying one of my children. Nor did I think that I would have to be carrying her legacy as opposed to her carrying mine when I transitioned.
Right.
But the piece with that is that Dennis Klaus, who's a PhD professor emeritus at Webster University in Missouri, talked about a concept called continuing bonds, where we transform the relationship, and I'm paraphrasing this, with our children by connecting with them and keeping the relationship alive in communities that support it. So when you talk about having people help bring in a picture or bring in an object that connects them to memory, that's how we grieve. We grieve through remembering, not through forgetting. And that's one of the other myths, is that no, forgetting is not going to help us grieve effectively. It's consistently remembering, integrating our grief, and transforming the relationship with our transition loved ones.
Isn't that, can we call something like that touchstones, bringing in a picture or having something that this is my son's or my daughter's, and to say, well, why do you carry that grubby old blue backpack around that is just, why don't you get rid of it? Why don't you wash it? Because it's Baylin's. And I don't care whether at some point in time it is like a old blankie that our kids carry around that their mom or grandma, and they still have it in college or whatever. But I love having something that I can look at and just, because I can't see him when I talk to him, I have something to hold on to.
I like that. I definitely like that. And yep, see, I got that right there. I got a few other things. I got this right here was my son's toy and everything. So I still have that. This was in his pocket when he passed away. And so I definitely keep that closer to me. And then also he has a little stuffed monkey called Klein Alphabet, which in German it just means little monkey boy, right? Because that's what he was. He was my little monkey boy. And, got a comment in there, most of the times the people that you're around do change, and that's a reality of it, because sometimes when you go through something traumatic like a child loss or something like that, most people who have children kind of distance themselves from you, and it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. See, and they think that it's going to rub off on them somehow.
Yeah.
It's going to rub off on them. It's going to, what happened to me is going to happen to them, and things like that. And so they're like, we got to stay away from that. I don't want nothing to happen to my child. And I get it.
Yep.
I get it. You can't take things personal when these things happen. And another myth, and we should dispel this myth, is that oftentimes people think that your world is going to be the same after experiencing child loss. And that right there, if you go in with that mindset, your grief is going to take you on a roller coaster ride until you understand that no, your world does change. The way that you see life changes, right? But also, as mentioned in the comments, as we talked about, so does your circle of people.
Yep. Well, yeah. Yep.
One of the most hurtful things had nothing to do with the loss of my son. It was the fact that looking at somebody and saying, look, you have to understand, my mind is broken right now. I can't put pieces together right now, and I don't understand a lot of things. And what they said was, well, why can't you just be normal? Why can't you just act normal? And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I don't know what normal is anymore. I don't know what it looks like. And so I had to back way away from that person, because some people, when they say, they kind of clump all of the myths together and say, just move on, just get over it. It's so hard sometimes.
Well, I think also there is so many different expectations between men and women. I've said this hundreds of times.
Yes.
Like, men are supposed to bounce back and go back to that normal, where women are sort of given this, it's, this, their son or daughter, they're the mom. The man is bounce back and return to that normal state. And it's terrible that we had to learn this, is to excuse others for the ignorance that they have with grief. And sometimes the patience that we have to show, and the forgiveness that we have to show,
I agree with that.
people I sing from their heart. Like this is a place like they're really trying to say something to fix me or to make me feel better. But also with the fact of the normalcy, like with normalcy, I've always said 1,000 times, I am version 2.0. I am a totally different.
Yeah.
Anybody want to dovetail?
Yeah, there's one thing I wanted to dovetail off what you talked about earlier was that our friends or people that we were in our circle kind of stay away from us because they think we're gonna be contagious. If we lost a child, they're gonna lose a child or something to that effect. The other thing is that I think what our listeners need to know is that we go through changes ourselves internally.
Yes.
Um, we, for me, I felt disconnected from myself after my daughter transitioned because the person I was before she transitioned was no longer there. I could look in the mirror, Tony, and Dorian and Hope, and I didn't recognize the guy that was standing back from me. So a lot of times my exile was very much self-imposed because I needed to try to figure things out. What type of a world do I want to exist in now? How am I going to move forward? What's going to change for me? And a lot of times I backed away from my friends. I backed away from those individuals. I needed time to sort things out because the loss of a child in any type of catastrophic loss is a very not only shock, but it's very disorienting because we have to reevaluate how we want to move forward and what beliefs and priorities and values we're going to move forward with. And that is in and of itself is a daunting task. I didn't want to be around too many people when I was going through that.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting to,
Mhm.
when somebody will ask, "Are you doing okay?" Sometimes it's so exhausting to say, I don't even know how to explain how I feel right now, even years after. And all of a sudden, and I can tell you that there's certain things that will trigger me more because it's like I'll watch some of these reels on Facebook about either soldiers coming home.
Mm.
And it's not just to come see me. It's the fact of like the soldier will come and a brother or sister is so excited to see them. There's certain things that we know that we'll never be able to share in that. And I think that scares a lot of people about not wanting to talk to us about certain things.
Mm.
Especially when I find out, that certain people are, some of Baden's friends are getting married or having babies or going off to school or different things like that. People don't want to say certain things. I want them to talk about their kids. I want them to appreciate what I don't have. And I came to the realization of that is one of the most important things, that please don't stop living your life.
Mhm.
And if I decide in that moment to come and participate and share in that, that's on me. I get to do that with you and see what it would be like, So please don't hold me away. If I want to stay away from people, it's not hard for me. I'll isolate real well,
Oh yeah. I think that's the easy part though. And there's a comment there, and I'm glad that Hope is here as well, because we got some men up here. And they said it best. A lot of times we want to be strong for our woman, and so we often neglect ourselves, as men. But also we need other people to remind us that we do have emotions.
Mhm.
We do need to express those things instead of keeping it in, and I think that's a good thing when you can do that with your spouse whenever you're ready to come in and connect. Because I know when I lost my son, I went completely empty. There was nothing. There was nothing there. There was no emotion. I guess there was emotion. There was the pain associated with it, but it was just it just like now, it's consistent.
Mhm.
It doesn't go anywhere. I've just learned how to manage it a little bit better.
Mhm.
Yes, I still isolate as well. Now is that the same? Is that the same for you?
So I think one of the things is I've learned and uncovered is I started using excuse of not getting involved in life. And so I use that almost well, I lost my son, I'm not going to join, or I did this, and then I started using I stopped living and using that as an excuse instead of the opposite way of get out and experience things and start living again because of my son, right?
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
I started using his death as an excuse of not participating in life. And this is going the wrong way. Yeah, like this is not living for my son. This is sort of,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that's one of the things. Now, do I still need time by myself? Absolutely. Do I still have bad days and good days? But what I have to remember as a person, grieving, man, I have to make sure that that's a morning. If I'm having a bad morning, this afternoon, I got to get better, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when you have to start motivating yourself for the next event. A lot of hard work, a lot of time. And it gets to the point where sometimes, like you said, Dory, it's exhausting. Sometimes grief is so exhausting that you do start to isolate just because of your mind. You have to relax in that mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, oh, please, Dave, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Mm-mm.
You go ahead, Dorian. I can wait.
I just was going to mention that sometimes, as far as, being exhausted, there are times when, like, right in the middle of something, I'm like, I have to go lay down. My body is shutting down right now. I have to go lay down and make it so that it's like, I don't move. I try my hardest not to think about anything in that, but it's the fact of that emotion can not only get you mentally, emotionally, it can get you physically. And people don't understand that part when we're trying to explain something, or all of a sudden it's like, time out, I need a nap. And they're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I just know myself. I'm not going to make it much longer if I don't. And I'm going to have to, I don't care if I'm in Walmart or whatever. I'm going to find a place I don't, but if I don't take my time, that's a thing. If we don't take our time and say, this is what I need, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. This is what I need right here, right now.
Yeah. And I think self-care is important. We need to empower ourselves as much as possible, particularly in early grief, because the loss of a child is disempowering.
Oh,
So
my gosh.
if it's isolating, if it's laying down for 10 or 20 minutes, if it's shut the phone off, shut the curtains off, just, withdrawing from the world for a little while just so you can recharge, do it. And isolation too. When I've sat in the quiet, a lot of things have come to me that have helped me,
Yes.
move through my grief. So a lot of times we quiet our mind, there are things that come to us, tools that we can use. The other thing, before I forget, when Tony, you talked about people encouraging us to move on, the first thought I had is that, and that's about the same with any loss. And they will lump child loss into this whole time limited, linear, step-by-step grief process. And none of that applies, not for child loss or any type of loss.
Right.
So moving on is you have to move on. You have to do closure. Well, we could do closure to the person's death, but never to the life. We can move through grief, which means that we carry our grief, that we will experience a degree of sadness for many times the rest of our lives, because relationships don't die because the physical body have died. So those are other myths we have to spell. It's an ongoing process where we learn to integrate it and we learn to manage it better. And so those were some of the things that, before I forgot, that I wanted to to dovetail off of what you said, the other thing that really needs to be understood is though we can all unite around the pain of losing a child, depending on cause of death, depending on other circumstances, there are unique issues to each of our journeys that need to be respected. So though there are similarities, there still might be differences that we also have to bear witness to and understand. So, because depending on cause of death, clinicians or bereavement support specialists are going to be dealing with specific issues related to cause of death.
Right.
Like, for example, death by homicide. It isn't uncommon for an individual to want to have it rage and vengefulness and think about getting revenge towards a person that killed their loved ones. Doesn't mean they're homicidal. It means they're hurting. And there's other things that that you need to be aware of that are unique to each cause of death. And it's important that we establish ourselves as listeners so we can understand that fully.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I completely agree with that. Because of my son's murder, the frustration and the revengeful aspect of it. But then when it came to the criminal aspect of it, where then I felt the justice system had let my son down. So then I was so angry, like there was anger, and I was never, ever, ever that way before. And when I finally come to realize that, okay, I can lay down and not accomplish anything or respect my son as the way he lived, but up and start living in the positive way that I lived before, but it's invented because now I have something driving me and pulling me to start serving others and providing some guidance when it comes to murder and all those kind of things. That it was like being, like I said, version 2, anger and hate. It would allow that person to, he not only take Justin, but he would take me too. And so that is something that I had to evolve with, was that, okay. And I will say one of the biggest things, and I know this sounds funky, is that he wasn't indicted and I didn't have to relive this for years, for trials, for all that kind of thing that would have pushed off that grief and would have delayed me from bringing closure. And for years or months or how, actually, like, this closure point was that, okay, this is where it ends. Now you need to figure out what to do from here.
Right. I think the hardest thing I ever had to experience after my son passed away was someone close to me. This is probably about 6 months after he passed away. They said, "Well, you should be over it by now."
Oh.
Yeah, that was hard. I had to look at this individual and I went, you know what? I think it's best that you're not around me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or for the people on the outside looking in, they would often say, "This is too much for me."
Yeah.
Even though I'm the one who experienced it. They would go, "Oh, man, this is too much for me." I'm going, "Oh, well, I'm glad it's too much for you."
Right.
I'd like to walk away from it.
Yeah, I would love to walk away from this and pick up tomorrow and my son here.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that it bothers you that this is heavy on me.
And I think a lot of times, Tony and Dorian and Hope, people don't mean to say insensitive things. I think for the most part, I like to, if it's said with sincerity, if they're just learning, they're saying what they think is going to be comforting because that's what they have been fed as far as information. And in reality, those comments, if anything, don't really serve to be to comfort. They may serve to unintentionally undermine our pain. And that's something that, but are there some people that are just generally clueless? Sure. But I always look at intent. And I can give you an example real quickly if you guys want to hear this as far as intent. There was a time in my daughter's hospitalization where her pain was uncontrollable and she was screaming out in agony in the hospital room. This had to be at least for 2 hours. And there was a nun who was there who was ministering to her, and she was trying to provide comfort. And after Janina transitioned, and eventually Janine's pain did subside after a couple of hours of heavy, medication and gradually increasing her dosages of pain medication. At the calling hours, she came, looked at Janine's open casket and said, "I've never seen your daughter more peaceful." Now, this is where shock was a blessing, because if I might have been the first person in the world to have been arrested for hitting a woman of the cloth or a nun when she said that. But what happened is I thought about context for a second. And my shock allowed me to think about it. I said, wait a minute. She was there when my daughter was, and she was not at peace. She was in excruciating pain. So based on her frame of reference, that's what she meant. Not that she was at peace in the casket. She was at peace because she was no longer in pain when she saw her. Once I was able to register that, I was just able to look at her comments with a gracious heart. So it's always about, is the intent pure?
Good point.
And I agree with you, Dave. I really do. Because a lot of times people don't know what to say. I've had child loss compared to pet loss and things like that, and I've had to step back and actually learn how to not to take things personal, right? And understand that they are coming at it from a place of love, but they're coming at it from a place there to where they understand. And so I would have to switch my mind over and go, who am I to tell them that the loss of their pet does not mean the same thing as the loss of a child, And so it did help build healthier relationships and bring a lot of things to the forefront, such as, hey, sometimes I understand what you're saying, but sometimes some things don't need to be said because the other person that you're telling it to, they may actually get upset with you.
Yeah.
I love that. One of the under is what you say to somebody in the midst of grief, whether it's a nun and she's get back to normal or get over it, or in 6 months, let's get on, is that sticks with the griever. And they may mean it just in passing, but somebody said to me, at least you have your other side. And that's sticks with me because I'm like, what do you mean? Right? And so, I'm appreciative of my son, but good Lord, what an awful thing to say. Of course, I didn't say that, but that stuck with me. So in my teachings and talking about grief, I always tell everyone, don't say anything. Exactly that. I don't know what to say. And just leave it at that, because people don't realize that sticks with us for years. And it may be something that's just, that nun would have never thought that story, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Never said that if it affected you that way. And so I think we need to make sure that people understand that if you don't know what to say, don't. And if you come with a heart, we, again, have to be respectful and expect ourselves to be forgiven. Our heart. But if you know what to say, don't say anything. Just say that. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
See, and I love this statement right here because, they said, oftentimes people will say, well, you can just have another one. Just like getting a new puppy. It's really not that simple. One of the realities of child loss, losing a child, is that in the back of your head, in the back of your mind, you always think that it can happen again. Yes. Especially if you have multiple children, right? You always think to yourself, I do have another one, but what happens if I lose this one? Our reality has changed. Our thought pattern has changed. It's like the thing that you thought that was impossible to happen has now happened. And so now with that train of thought is you become more protective over your other children if you have other children. Or you have another one. I had people tell me that as well. Oh man, you can have another one. You're still young. I go, no, I can't have any more. And they go, what do you mean? Well, I'm the last of my bloodline. Oh, you can no, I'm fixed. I can't have any more children. Oh, you can always adult. And what's going to happen? What if life takes that choice away from me as well? Do we want to, you have to ask yourself before you ask these questions, would you want to repeat that pain?
Oh, man.
It's being scared, right? I know that, being scared. I don't want no one or to ever have to experience that sort of pain ever again. So do I? No, even if I could have children, I probably wouldn't.
Well, here's the other thing too. I mean, just with Hope's comment, it's like, well, do you have other children? It's like, well, having a surviving children is going to make up for the loss or the impending loss of your other child. And the other thing that's hurtful too, if they're surviving siblings, you're undermining their grief in the process too. Because what you're saying is that your brother or sister that you lost is replaceable, and they're not. The sibling bond is something that, the young adults I have in class, I've asked them, how many times have you told your siblings something you never tell your parents? And every one of them raise their hand because that bond is inviolate. The other thing to say is something like that well, you can have another child where it's particularly hurtful is to a family, a couple who has lost a child either through miscarriage loss or newborn death. Because one of the perceptions of miscarriage or newborn death is that it's a lost pregnancy, not a lost child. So to say that to somebody is saying that we didn't lose a child, we lost a pregnancy, or
it's not valid.
It's not valid. It becomes disenfranchised grief.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that they may not be able to have another child because let's say this was their last chance. They tried infertility clinics. This might have been their last chance for them to have a child, their own biological child. So to say that undermines that whole process as well too. So I think as Hope said, if you don't know what to say, don't say a thing. Just say that you're in my thoughts, and that's something to that effect. But if you don't know what to say, don't say it. And the other thing, one of the things I've learned as a result of the challenges with my daughter's death is to be more mindful of my language, is how I come across, what I say. Because before I became really impacted by loss, I used to probably say a lot of the same, not probably, I said some of the same insensitive things. And one of the things I'm thankful for with one of the things I've learned as a result of the challenges is I'm more mindful of my words now and how they can be received.
Right. And I also like this, Titaha mentioned that they've gotten rid of one of the men's child loss support groups, got rid of the word sorry. You have I totally agree with that because you have nothing to be sorry about. Nothing like you just wake up and say, oh, this is what's going to happen today. And, no one asked for this. No one. And I would, honestly, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And so, no, you have nothing to be sorry about. You're allowed to grieve in the way that makes you feel something. I'm not going to say make you feel happy or anything like that because in those moments it's devastating. But you're allowed to grieve in a way that makes you feel, whatever it's like to you. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I was just experiencing telling someone else that earlier. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Some people look, and I've seen it all across the board. Some people self-medicate to escape the pain, isolation. Let's see. Some people figure it out and find a way to serve others, like we have, right?
Yeah.
But that's not for everyone. That's not for everyone. I would say, and a lot of people that experience this sort of loss, they tend to shy away from the things that they did with their loved ones. And so that's the reality. I would say, what, when you get to a place to where you're comfortable, start to go out and do those things that you did with your loved one. If you want to connect and start a healing process, go out there and experience life. Like I love to fish. Me and my son, we used to fish all the time. And so I still go and fish, whether if I'm with someone or by myself, right? I still go and climb trees. I love climbing trees with my kid. He taught me when he
I
was
like that.
that it was okay for me to go and be a kid with him, right? And depending on where you are in that journey, go and do those things. Experience life just in a different way. You know, if you are out there self-medicating and things like that, when you get to a point, seek help, seek professional help, and get yourself back together. Once you're ready, though, you know. And I don't recommend it for anyone. I do not recommend self-medication for anyone. But we live in the reality. We do live in that reality.
Sometimes that's the only way that because that wound is never ever going to go away. And so to numb the pain, sometimes it gets so heavy, so hurtful that we don't know what to do except do anything and everything possible so that the pain becomes manageable. My communication has always been, I'm not a self-medicator when it comes to, you know, alcohol or drugs or anything like that. Mine has always been anger. And so it's a fact of the why. You know, somebody will come up and say, well, you're so angry. Ask me why, right? Now, I also wanted to address just a couple of things. First of all, Tony, I'm struggling just a little bit because of the fact of I've not got a invitation yet to go fishing. You put that down, young man.
You know what? I'm over it already.
Okay, hey.
You know what? I'm putting you down, young man. I am Dorian Johnson. Invitation. You see this? I'm writing it down, right? I'm writing.
Okay, then.
Already bullying me.
Okay. I'm telling you right now, I'm not on the naughty list. I just want to be on the fishing list. Okay.
No, you're on the naughty list until we go fishing. All right.
Okay. Done. You know,
Hey, I'll tell you, you don't have to invite me fishing because one, I've never fished. Secondly, I would probably hook your butt with when I was casting.
Okay.
So you pretty much don't want to do that, man.
Dave's list is no way.
But I'll tell you, I would go with you and watch you fish.
But you know what? To me, that is amazing where you can go out there and you can be mindful. You mentioned about being mindful of not just the language, but our actions and things. That's one of my favorite things to do is to go out. And people are like, well, you know, they say the offensive thing. Do you catch anything? How dare you? You know, but I also get to watch ospreys fish. I get to listen to the sound of the wind through the leaves. I'm living. I'm not just isolating. I'm living. I'm going through a healing process. You know, I think, you know, as you say, you know, to be mindful of what we say. One of the biggest things that I've learned is how many people say as they walk by, how are you? And I will lie through my teeth every time. Oh, I'm great. But if they ask me, are you doing okay? Oh, hell no, I'm not. And but it gives me permission to say, oh, no, I'm not. And then they will say, it's like they stand there and give me permission for them to take as much time as I need until I say, I'm good. Thank you for that. Right now, I will say also, we were talking about, you know, the things that we go through, like the way that our child has passed away, or, you know, whether it be some of the things I couldn't even fathom. But I always say, because it wasn't just the grief involved with losing my son. I never had support from family, from anybody. I dealt with it on my own. Pure and simple. And so when somebody will ask me about things, I'll say, you know, losing my son has been one of the easier things to deal with over the last 6 years. I don't go into it, but to say that, what else has gone on? And so, how are you standing up? How are you smiling? How are you getting through all of this stuff? Some days I don't know, but it's a fact of being aware of somebody who has gone through certain things and being mindful of where they are in that moment. If they are smiling, maybe they are doing well in that moment. It has nothing to do with everything else.
Right.
So it's a fact of being able to say, you know what? I'm so glad to see you today. I'm glad that I was able to spend a moment with you. Are you doing okay? What can I help you with? What do you need? What do you want? And what that allows me to do is to offer compassion or kindness unlimited to them, because I understand that I don't understand what they're going through. But I'm willing to stand here and be with them, and they can receive, because it's not coming from me, it's coming through me.
Right. TTI said, if we come to New Zealand, we can go on a yacht and we go fish. So we have an open invitation. Look,
My gosh.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying already. See, that's the stuff that we be talking about right there. This man, he said, come out here. He go
Tony,
take us out on a yacht.
Push, submit.
Yeah.
Say
Yes.
yes.
Hey, yes.
Here.
The green light,
Here.
buddy. Don't do it,
Yes.
because you'll mess around and you won't get rid of
Here.
us. We'll be out there fishing all the doggone time, okay? But you know what? Honestly, I would love to get him. I would love to get him on one of the panels if he's ever up to it one of these times, man.
Yes.
I love that he's here. He's participating. I would love to get him up here just to meet him first and foremost, but also get him involved in what we got going on. So yeah, thank you.
And sometimes it is, if we've never been through something, sometimes it's a perfect thing to go out and fish or do something. Or, Dave, I don't want you hooking me in the butt, but there's got to be something you and I can go and do so we can have a good conversation, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, just know how coordinated I am when it comes to outdoor sports, but which is not coordinated at all.
I don't want a nice set of earrings. That's what I'm telling you. All right.
All right, but here's the thing, and I wanted to dovetail off of this. If you or Tony invited me to go fishing, I would go just for the company, because especially if Tony was if that was a ritual with your son, you're inviting me to do to accompany you on an activity that was sacred to you and your son.
Yes, absolutely.
And therefore, I would feel privileged and honored that you invited me, because I would be sharing something that you and your son did. And so it wouldn't matter if I fished or not. I would just sit there and just keep you company, be quiet, just offer companionship, and just
be
witness an activity that was something that bonded you and your son. And I would be honored to witness that. So I wouldn't have to fish. I would just have to be in your company and your son's company.
Yeah. And Hope, you can come with us. You have to bait your own hook and take your own fish off. Okay.
First of all, I know how to bait a hook, I know how to fish, and I know how to take my fish off. So
Tony, put her down right now. Put her down.
Oh, Hope already knows. That's my sister from another mother, man. She already knows.
right. You don't have to worry about me.
Yeah. See.
I see again. I see the resemblance. I see it.
This is all family, man. This is all family. So don't get too far ahead, because Hope she's a little bully. Okay, just FYI. No, don't give me that look. Do not give me that look.
Well, and she's a mom too. I don't care mouth off. I'm going to timeout.
Oh my God! Look, you don't even know she's a little bully. We ain't gonna take nothing though. We don't.
I'm a match for all three of you all. So
No question.
Oh my God, I love it, man. I definitely love it, man. But no, some of the realities of child loss. It is by far, in my opinion, the worst pain that you will ever go through. There's nothing else like it. It doesn't go anywhere.
There's no name for it.
There's no name for it. I mean, I read a quote one time. They said someone asked them to describe child loss, and they just left the paper blank. That's it.
Wow.
There's nothing like that, you know. And I wouldn't wish this on someone that I didn't like, and I like everybody, you know. But if I didn't like anyone, I still wouldn't wish this on them.
No.
You know, one of the reality is that it does happen. You know, I was reading something. I think Dave and I talked about this a while ago as well. Is that, you know, a long time ago, did you know that, you know, the people used to have multiple kids, and you know, with the thought of they were going to lose some. So they would have 10, 12 kids. They would literally have 10, 12 kids with the understanding that out of that 10 or 12 kids, maybe 6 will make it. And so it is not like that life is picking on you. It's not like life just singled you out and said, this is what I'm going to do with you. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people don't like to hear this. It happens. And it sucks when it does happen. You know, another reality is that you never go back to life the way that you see, the life that you had before. You never do that, right? Because your life will change. You know, you do see. I know for most of us, we probably do look at life as if, you know, like, if something happens, it's not really surprising anymore.
That's so true, because I think one of the things that I try to explain to people is I have a new vision of life after Justin's death that I've never had before or would have had, because I think we take so much. And I try to tell people, you know, the saying, don't take anything for granted, or, you know, to feel the real true life experience when you experience that grief, because you do feel like at any moment things change, and they have, and it's seconds, literally seconds. And so I tell people, understand something that you or do or motivate or create or build or whatever, it's day one. Not one day, day.
Yes.
You can't buy tomorrow's. And as the saying says, you know, you don't know if you'll wake up tomorrow, but I need to on what I believe and what dreams I have, and make it like someone has told me tomorrow may not come. So what are you going to do today to make a difference? And that's what it's all about. And I would have never, and I didn't feel that way. It was limitless, right? I always had that next day or that next tomorrow. And so I literally have been reborn with a sense of what life purpose is, how important it is, and you got one shot. And you know what? If I know today that I've done possible, and that's what you have to really focus on.
And I would agree with everything that's been said. And I would also agree that for me, the loss of a child was the worst loss imaginable. And I'm no stranger to grief. I mean, I've been dancing with grief since I've been 5 years old, but this was the most transformative loss, the worst loss. But another myth that we need to dispel is just because our worst loss was the loss of a child does not mean we can't meet you at the pain of your worst loss. And it doesn't have to be the loss of a child, it could be anything. Because the loss of a child for many of us, it wasn't the only loss that we've experienced. It was certainly the worst loss, the most transformative. But I've experienced loss of parents, I've experienced loss of pets, friends. So I can meet anybody at where their worst pain is. My job is just to be a companion, to be a witness, and to walk the path with them, and certainly not for them.
That, you know what, I totally agree with that. I'm right there with Dave. You know, loss of parents, loss of a sibling, and all of those things. You know, so life does look totally different for me when I go out. I have gratitude and appreciation when I see others. enjoying time with their family and things like that. Like, I don't take it personally or anything like that. Do I wish that they were here so I can go out and barbecue with them as well, or take them on some of the things that I do to share some of the experiences that I'm now experiencing. Now here's where it sounds really strange. If I had not experienced these things, I would not be living the life that I am right now in my true blessing, because it allows me, just like Dave said, it allows me to come into your space and visit with you as someone that you can relate to, understanding that, hey, we can talk. We have something in common. As sad as we want to realize that, we have something in common. And to me, that is my biggest blessing. Because, as Dave said, it allows me to meet you where you are, no matter where you are in your grief journey. And it's my honor to do it. You know what? It is my duty to do it. My job is to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so you invite me in and allow me to live within my servitude to you. I couldn't ask anything other.
Yeah. Barely after my son had passed away, I reached out to a counselor. She's not the counselor who I worked through things with, but I knew that her daughter had passed away in a car accident, and she was 19 when she passed away. My son was 19. And so she invited me over a few times to just have conversations, how are you doing? Okay, let's just talk. And one day, she looked at me and said, well, you know that we're not special or unique, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm about right here, saying, wait a second, what are you doing? She's like, whoa, understand. I know what we've been through. But, she's like, just calm down for a second. She's like, we're part of a club that we never chose to be in. And there's lots of other people who are in this club. And yet we've chosen something and take it out and help other people with. That's the difference. We're no different or special than anybody else. And I'm like, all right, I got to wipe my hands off because I was about ready to, we're about ready to go to town. The one thing that I have learned also is this. When the day that they found my son, I can't get over this whole mental picture of like falling down a rabbit hole. And it's like, and I'm actually writing a book about it called My 50 Shades of Grief, because I know that when I landed in my mind, I landed on my back looking up down at 49, level 49. If I was on my stomach, I would have been 50 and I would have been done for. But on my back, I looked up and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. You know what? I don't even know what to do here. And so now from having that visual to where I'm at right now, it's like when I hear somebody who goes through something, I can say, okay, in my mind, I went to level 49. I can go to that level with them. I don't want to, but I know I can. And if they say, oh, this is a 49 and it's actually a level 10, I'm going to treat it with kids' gloves and say, I know how you feel. I know what you're going through, even though it's a 10, and treat it with the validity of whatever they're going through with respect, reverence, honor, and saying, we're going to get through this. And I think that's a huge gift that I consider myself being given, is the fact of being able to look at somebody and saying, I don't know what they're going through, but I know what it feels like. We may have a different trial. We may have something completely different. and yet the feelings, emotions, all of that are the same. I'm here. What can I do? I'm not going anywhere.
Mm.
You know?
You know, one of the biggest things that I used to hear, which really used to tee me off, people used to always say the word broken. We're broken, you know? And the reason why it teed me off, because it never made sense to me. It never made sense to me. I'm a human being. The word broken is usually related to things. You can break a thing. You cannot break a human being. Now, you can hurt an individual very, very deeply. You can experience deep, deep pain. But far as breaking you, no, because that would mean that there's a part of you that is false. We can take it and break it, and then you can put it back together with some glue. No, that's or like a bone, right? You can break a bone, you know.
Yeah.
But when it comes to your heart or the human being, you can't break a human being. You can hurt a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that when I took that word broken out of my vocabulary and actually had to admit to myself that I was hurting, I'm hurt, it opened up the doors for me to find those avenues of healing along the way. And that was my truth. That was honestly my truth. I am not broken. I am hurt. So in order for me to heal, what steps do I need to take in order to understand this hurt, so I can begin the process? Anybody want to dovetail on that?
Yeah, so I think with broken, when I think of broken, I put it in a perspective, like I've said it before, like I just feel broken, but I think I feel it in a way that I am like in a bunch of different, mind is broken,
Yeah.
like I can put it together, like so when I think of broken, I feel like I'm just sort of all over the place and nothing's together, right? Like nothing fits. And so I think one of the hardest things with any kind of law is that fog or that candle wax melting. Like when grief first hits us, like when it first happens, I tell everybody it's sort of like a candle melting. It's like all blurry and all together, and it's nothing really, like you can't just is there and it's ugly and it's melty, but then as things go, you sort of have different pieces start to go together, like
Right.
you start to make sense of things in a way that a lot of times my thing was I wasn't getting questions answered.
Yeah.
Nobody was there questions like why this, why him, why me, why this, how come the justice system, blah blah blah. So I would ask all these questions and I wasn't getting answers, so all these pieces were everywhere, and then I had to start putting them together in a way that made me say happened. We're never going to know the answer of why.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I have to understand that why is never going to be answered. And it could drive me insane trying to figure that out. Like, why did this happen? And so I have to start. And now I have to take my why and make that the reason. And so in doing so, like my service, our service, what we do together, what we give people, how we try to help, how we try to serve, that's the why versus. So when I come to broken, I feel like it's pieces all over in my brain, and now I'm starting to glue those together.
Yeah.
And I definitely understand that as well. And like I said, that's just something that I put together that worked for me.
Yeah.
So understanding how your life can fall apart and things like that. it's still one of those things. Those are pieces of me, right? And as I start to heal,
Yeah.
there are things that are going to come back to me that I don't necessarily need, even though I feel that I need them, right? And so that's why I said the
Yep.
word hurt just made more sense, because if I'm hurting, once I start this healing process, the person that came back realized that there was a lot of stuff that fell out of me that was not necessary anymore. It opened me up, and to allow more information to come in, to allow on my healing journey and things like that. So, like I said, I get it. I definitely do. It definitely does feel that way.
For me, when I hear the term broken, and I'm coming, from being a therapist for, in the addictions field for 27 years, I always ask individuals, well, tell me what you mean by that. Tell me what your perception is. What does broken mean to you? Broken might be synonymous with hurt for that individual. So that's their terminology, that's their language. It's like somebody who's depressed. I can't assume I know what depression looks like for them. I have to ask them behaviorally, what happens to you when you're depressed? Because
Right.
that depression could actually be a form of anxiety as opposed to depression. So for me, I would probably want to, if there was, I would probably want to find out, what does broken mean to you? Tell me what that means. And tell me, if I use that term and you say, well, geez, I don't really resonate with that. Well, what's going to resonate that may be synonymous with that? That's going to be, specific to your own journey.
Right.
And plus, I remember one of the things I liked about Ernest Hemingway had a quote about the broken places, that sometimes many become stronger at the places that they're broken, or if you look at it, the places that they're hurting, we become
Yeah.
stronger. And I think in grief we become stronger at those places that have been kind of been damaged, been hurt, because of our work. We become different, and we become more stronger at those places, but it's a different kind of strength. It's a different kind of strength.
I wonder if it's because we reinforce those areas that we know we are susceptible to get hurt again. Maybe it's not out of fear. Maybe it's a fact of knowing what is important, and that's why we spend a little bit more time going fishing with our other kids, or the people who we see are hurting. The reinforcement is to sit down because of what we know we get in return, not in a selfish way, but it's just, that's how it works. If you're kind, whether or not they accept it, you still get the blessing of being kind to that person.
Yes.
Well, and I think we fix those places that are hurt with different tools that we would not have even entertained prior to the loss of our
Agreed.
of our child. And it's like, and I'm not a builder, but I know a friend of mine is a builder, and we've talked about this. If a foundation cracks after 25 years, the materials you used to fix those 25 years ago may be obsolete. You have to use something different. So we have to really kind of re-engage in the world using different tools that we have learned as a result of the challenges with the death of our children that we normally would not have entertained previously had our children not transitioned.
So I'd love to answer Tatiana his question. The one thing that's holding me back in my progress is I need accountability of the people who killed my innocent little boy. How can I heal while these people are still out doing it? And I had this, and this is my perspective. So I had to go on the journey of the person that killed my son he's in my community. He lives in probably the same town as far as I know. Never spoke to his parents. And what I had to realize was, for me personally, was that I allowed, or he took Justin. I didn't allow it, but he took Justin. And I wasn't going to allow him to take me and my life. I'm going to let that control me. I'm not going to allow that to take over my life, that anger, that hate, that rage, because at the end of the day, I guarantee you, he's not thinking about Hope. He's not thinking about Justin, and he's not thinking about that go and not that. Unfortunately, I hope that they're not out here and the police are doing their job, and that's being taken care of. But for you personally, for me personally, I had to let go on my own, what I thrived, what I needed to do and live for my son. So it was really all about, I had to forgive, which was horrible, but that was for me. And my thinking, my thoughts, everything, because he's not doing that for me. He doesn't care what I'm doing. And that allowed me the freedom to start living again.
Yeah.
Right. So we do have someone who who wants to ask us a question. Far as the other one, not the site for that. Please don't do that. Go to another site for that. But yes, Chris Leese 9. You have a question? Yes, by all means, put your question in the comment section.
Myth, and I don't know if it's a myth, but I think it's important to bring up is siblings. We were talking about siblings, and we were not able to talk about it real quick. But I think what happens a lot of times with siblings is they get lost in the grief.
Yes.
First one that passed, only that person and that sibling who's grieving gets lost in the shuffle. So we have to start making sure that those siblings feel important, feel engaged, feel like their grief matters, that they lost, as well as what in their life taken by the dead sibling. That's one of the things in my journey. I have to make sure that Brian feels important and that he's not shadowed by his brother's death. And that is a very fine line.
Yes. Unfortunately, my sister, I have a younger sister, and so we've experienced a lot of the same losses and things like that. And I do take into consideration when it comes down to this, the only difference between she and I now is that I've already lost a child. She has 4 beautiful daughters, and her daughters are now becoming mothers as well. And so it's always in the back of my mind, because my son never had the chance to meet any of my family or anything like that before he passed away. And so, yes, a lot of those things are there. I always make sure that my sister is okay when it comes down to it. I always want to make sure that I want to make sure she's okay before me. So that's just me just being a bigger brother and everything. I always feel that my job is to protect her from the pain that I've experienced.
Yes.
So yeah, they can definitely get lost in that. And we can also get lost in it ourselves because we do spend a lot of time doing that. And it goes back to that same thing. Whenever you experience things like this, our first instinct is to make sure those around us are better off than us, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Protection's what we do. As parents, that's what we do. I think that's where we're just kind of ingrained to protect those we care about.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
and even if it's like a simple car accident or whatever, the first thing we do is look to the passenger. If there's somebody there, are you okay? Are you okay? Check, are you bleeding or whatever, before we even check and make sure that, why am I hurt? And why do I feel like I have, glass in my head or whatever? It's the fact of turning and say, are you doing okay? What's going on with you?
So we got a troll up here, which I'm going to address
Yep.
the individual right now. Whomever you are, please go to another site. This is not for you. This is an educational site to help those who are grieving. For you to come up here and be disrespectful to people out here educating other people, well, you can take the comment that you gave Dave and apply it to yourself. Okay. Yeah, no, don't kid like that. It's not
Just
funny.
leave. Just leave.
Then just leave. That's all you have to do. Matter of fact, the next time we go live, don't even jump on. No, this is not kidding. You just came up here and disrespected me my panel. That is not a joke. We are educating people. Well, go ahead and play your games then. I think that's the best way you need to do it. But leave this to a site, leave this site to people who actually can benefit from what we're going through. If you're grieving, hey man, I would suggest that you get some professional help, but please do not disrespect anyone else on my panel ever again. You are the reason why people hate coming up here and doing this. Yes, you are. Thank you. Thank you very much. But don't apologize to me. Apologize to my panel. Apologize to my friend Dave. Thank you. Now, please, if you have a question that we can answer for you, we are more than happy to help you. All right? But please don't be disrespectful, because I will come at you. I will. All right. Thank you very much. So now, as we move forward, yes, we. Any of you would like to ask a question? I'm going to take a breather and step back a little bit and kind of turn off my microphone because any other questions that you guys have, or anything else that we could dive into before we shut down?
I think we covered just about everything that we could cover.
Yes.
For now.
It's been an honor to be able to be on here and have a conversation about something that has made a deep connection with three other individuals who I never would have been able to have a conversation like this, and to have people, I'm sorry to say, we understand, we get it. So thank you.
Yes. Now, so I want to take a minute and let you guys tell people where they can find you and things like that. So, David, would you like to tell people where they can find you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. My email is bootsyandangel@gmail.com. If you're interested in Patty Farino's and my book, When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister, you can go on Amazon and look at the purchasing information, or to our book website, Psychology Professor and Minister, and minister.com. And I'm never too hard to find. I'm always around. So anybody can send me an email, send me a Facebook message, and I will be glad to talk with them.
All right. Hope?
Yeah, you can find me at grief2hopesupport.com. That's right. You can, on my website, you can find out my next session, which starts August 3rd for Grief to Hope. It's a completely free program. Anyone can join for as well as my book, Grief to Hope. If you're not comfortable with the group setting, it walks you through my story in the program. And soon to be, I've got a workbook coming out to go along with my program. So I'm really excited. Everything is on my website. Again, grief2hopesupport.com. You can also find Hope Rigger, Grief to Hope, both on Facebook, Grief to Hope on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. Thanks.
Dorian.
You could find me on Facebook. I have my personal page, but I also have a group that I started called A Day in the Life of Grief, where we talk basically about all sorts of things that happen during the day, or different things about how I feel. I'll post different things, and sometimes it's not for me, for other people. I have a book. It's called The View from Above. It's a story about looking for my son and the hike that we took a year to the day to put a memorial up on top of the mountain that he hiked. I've got a couple other books coming out. One of them called the My 50 Shades of Grief, talks about the different myths of grief and loss, and also the truth about loss, about like the secondary aspects of grief that go along with loss. So come find me on Facebook. I'm easy to find. Thank you. Very honored to be here.
It is an honor to have each and every last one of you up here. As always, it's always a pleasure. The education, the things that we talk about. Thank you, because without you guys, this would not be possible. And so my name is Tony Lynch. I am the founder of Memories of Us, when I offer grief support for men. Also, I am the founder of Grief, the Global Grief Network, and we are a network of grief workers who are dedicated to serving you, our communities. And also, if you guys are paying attention, write down the dates, April 28th to April 30th. We have the Global Grief Conference coming up. We have presenters from across the world coming to with the single purpose of educating and helping you in your healing journey. And I'm also the host of Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. So if you guys want to see more like this, or be, stay up to date on everything that we're doing, go on over there to the YouTube channel, subscribe to it, and let us know what you think about it. Until next time, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for allowing us to support you. We love you. And until next time, take it one day at a time, one breath at a time. And it's okay if you're not okay. You got people out here that'll walk with you. So we love you.